We have got some breaking news on this Wednesday afternoon. DK Metcalf, the superstar wide receiver of the Seattle Seahawks, has requested a trade away from Seattle. The reason for this trade request really hasn't been reported on. The only thing that has been mentioned is that he is looking for a new contract. He's on the last year of his deal. And most of the time when you see these trade requests and there isn't like a very apparent reason why they're requesting one, you can largely assume it's due to their contract and the Seattle Seahawks not wanting to pay a bunch more money for multiple years in the future for Metcalf. So he wants out, and the Seattle organization does seem willing and open to moving him for probably the highest bidder. Now, this is a little bit surprising because just a few hours before the trade request of Metcalf, the other longtime Seattle Seahawks wide receiver, Tyler Lockett, he got released from the team. So Seattle could be looking at two new starting wide receivers heading into 2025. Of course, they have JSN, who's one of the best slot wide receivers in the league, but he is not proven to be able to play consistently on the outside. So Seattle has a lot to do in terms of bringing in some more skill position players. But in terms of Metcalf himself, he's only 27 years old. He will be 28 towards December of this upcoming season, but he's still in the prime of his career. He has multiple over 1,000-yard seasons. He is coming off of a down year, but mainly because he only played in 15 games due to, I believe, an ankle injury. He still caught 66 passes for 992 yards and 5 touchdowns. And I don't think his dip in production is going to impact what he can garner in the trade market. And if you just take his skills, his physical talent, his ability to be an ex-wide receiver, and really just his production the first 6 years of his career, I do think Metcalf could get back a first-round pick for Seattle. The issue, though, is his personality kind of being a diva and having some really boneheaded plays at times, I do think could have teams unwilling to part ways with their top selection in this year's draft. And some immediate teams that come to mind would be like the Buffalo Bills, the Green Bay Packers, and the Los Angeles Chargers. The Bills are kind of looking for a new stud wide receiver one ever since they traded away Stephon Diggs to the Houston Texans. Last year, their offense was still really good, but it was mainly a running offense with their offensive line and James Cook. They utilized a lot of short passes to like Khalil Shakir and some of their tight ends like Dalton Kincaid, but they didn't really have a true ex-wide receiver who could consistently win one-on-one on the outside. They traded for Amari Cooper in the middle of the season, and he didn't really produce as much as they thought he would. Keon Coleman had some moments as a rookie, but he wasn't very consistent as well. So as Buffalo tries to get over the hump, I do wonder if they would part ways with maybe like a second and third round pick to acquire DK and also give him a new contract. I think the two front runners currently for me, though, are the Green Bay Packers and the Los Angeles Chargers, both of which just need a premier weapon to throw the ball to. It's well documented the stable of receivers the Packers have: Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Doubs. I mean, the list goes on and on, but none of those young receivers yet have really emerged and taken the mantle as the top alpha on that team. And for right now, for the Packers, it's basically like, yeah, we have a bunch of number 2s and number 3s, but not really a go-to receiver. Would Green Bay be willing to part ways with their bottom half first round pick? If history told us anything about this Green Bay organization, I would say no. They are not very aggressive when it comes to skill position players. I remember the stat that Aaron Rodgers had never thrown a touchdown to a first round skill position player until Mercedes Lewis, and he wasn't even drafted by the Packers. So it's kind of crazy they don't invest a lot of high picks into these skill position players. So would they kind of tweak their philosophy to acquire DK? I don't know. And then the popular one that I think everybody's going to rally behind is the Los Angeles Chargers, because they had probably some of the worst weapons in the league last year. It really showcased itself in the wild card game against the Houston Texans when Ladd McConkey was the only player for the Chargers that could get open and actually hold on to the football. Quinn Johnston was more productive in your number 2, but I still don't think he's ever going to live up to being a first round pick. And as good as McConkey is, he is better suited for the slot or being your wide receiver 2. So getting somebody like DK Metcalf, who is a physical freak, I think could be really good for the Chargers. We saw how successful Justin Herbert was with Mike Williams, who's a bigger bodied receiver. I also think Jim Harbaugh is somebody who can deal with big personalities and kind of rein them in a little bit. So I don't think DK would be a problem for the Chargers or Harbaugh to kind of control and have him perform at his best week in and week out. Now, contract-wise, DK has a $31.8 million cap hit this upcoming season. I do think whatever team trades for him will have to have a contract kind of already agreed to make it happen. So I don't think his cap number will be an issue for a team like the Bills, who don't have a ton of cap space to trade for him. He'll get an extension, kind of spread that money out in the future coming years. So I do think that makes it easier to trade Metcalf, because really any any team will be able to afford him under their salary cap. Now, I talked about a few other teams. For Seattle, I don't know if I love this trade for them. The Seahawks have been kind of in a weird spot the last couple of years where they're good, but not really good enough to make serious noise in the playoffs, but not bad enough to get a top pick in the draft. And they're kind of running the mediocre merry-go-round with Geno Smith. There has been some talks about them extending him this offseason, so I don't know if that's going to happen or not. If this is the kind of move that maybe gets Seattle towards a reboot a little bit where they can get back some more capital for DK, maybe not be as good next season, find their future quarterback, and then kind of build up from the ground, I do think that could be a positive move for them. But the point of the matter is that in 2025, DK was going to be one of the best players on the entire team for Seattle. Made life a lot easier for Geno Smith and even JSN underneath, because DK was the guy that took the top off the defense, required a bunch of double teams and brackets, and kind of let him have a lot of space underneath. Now that he's gone, a lot of that focus is going to go on Jackson Smith and Jigba, so this is going to make his job a lot harder unless Seattle can find a very good replacement. And I'm recording this video like 20 minutes after this trade request has been filed, so there's some more news coming out like every single minute. And Adam Schefter did just report that Metcalf does want a contender. The other teams that I've seen people mention, like the New England Patriots or the Denver Broncos, I think those would be kind of second tier teams for him. I do think the Bills, the Chargers, and the Packers will kind of be the leaders in the clubhouse to acquire his services. And I do gotta say this, just in case it happens, I gotta warn you guys, I do expect the Kansas City Chiefs to also kind of be sniffing around here. They just traded away Joe Tooney. They got some cap relief. I do think they could make it work. I'm just saying, don't be mad at the messenger if the Chiefs try and make a run here for DK. And before we get out of here, I do want to mention another angle of this in terms of Seattle's side. With DK being on the last year of his contract, he's going to be getting his third extension in the NFL. And history shows us that in recent memory of these superstar wide receivers getting third contracts, it really hasn't worked out well. Of 11 recent third contracts for superstar receivers, more than half were traded or released before their second season on that third extension, and not a single one of those deals was good in terms of value on the cap. And for example, some of those contracts were like Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill of the Dolphins. So if you are John Schneider, you see the recent success of these third extensions for these wide receivers. So maybe it is smart if you are Schneider to sell high on DK, get back maybe a first or second round pick. Don't invest more high-end money to a receiver who is getting into his late 20s. But obviously, anytime you're trading away one of the best weapons in the NFL, it's a risky proposition. The value that Seattle would get back for him and how they utilize those picks will end up determining if this trade was a success for them or not. This year's receiver class is not great in the draft in terms of top-end prospects. I do think in day two, there could be some good value that Seattle could get to replace DK. Maybe somebody like Trey Harris, who's a very good athlete, over 6'2", 200 pounds, ran a 4.5 at the NFL Combine, had a 38.5 vertical leap, and he's also from Ole Miss. So maybe Seattle goes back to the well of Mississippi, trying to get a very physically talented player that does have some refinement needed. But let me know what you think about this trade request and this situation as a whole. Are the Seahawks making the right decision trading away Metcalf, and what value do you think they can get back for him? And also, what team do you think needs to trade for DK the most? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. But subscribe to the channel if you are new, drop a like in the video if you did enjoy it, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next one.